Welcome back to Telltale Books. I'm continuing my John W. Campbell Jr. exploration with his second story, which is actually related to his first story when the atoms failed. But you kind of don't have to read The Atoms Failed to read the second one, which is called The Metal Horde. But it does include the some of the same characters from When the Atoms Failed, particularly Waterson. And the story was published only a couple months after When the Atoms Failed in the April 1930 issue of Amazing Stories. Now, in The Metal Horde, it takes place about 15 years after When the Atoms Failed, and a lot of things have changed. Waterson has become president of, well, all the Terrans, pretty much the whole solar system. And he's still inventing incredible stuff. And man has gone out using his propulsion systems and has colonized the solar system. So we have commerce going on and people living on other planets and things like that. And right away at the start of the story, it is seen that there is something coming from the direction of the star Sirius. So it's not something of our solar system, it's coming from another star. And when it gets here, it right away goes and attacks Mars, destroys the Earth base on Mars, and lets out these machines which start to replicate these torpedo fighter spaceships and come after the people of Earth. But of course, Waterson is prepared, just not quite prepared for what arrives. But Earth very quickly assembles a huge space fleet and goes into battle with the aliens. Now, there's not a lot of character to this story. There's not much dialogue. The vast majority of the story is just description of the space battles and the strategies and the things they have to invent and how they counter the aliens and everything up until the end. So it's kind of a weird story because you're not following characters, you're not following somebody's adventures, you're just seeing kind of like a play-by-play, blow-by-blow description of this war between Earth and the Sirius forces. As a story, as a work of literature, this has very little to offer. But understand, this is only John Campbell's second story. He was only 20 years old at the time. He knew more about engineering than he knew about writing stories. For that reason, I don't really recommend this to much of anybody except somebody who's really interested in the early science fiction pulp stories or really interested in the career of John Campbell from a historical perspective, because it's not much of a story, really. The most interesting thing about this story, and here I got to get a little spoilery, but I can't recommend that you spend time reading it anyway, so I might as well spoil it for you. The aliens that come from Sirius are actually all machines. They're machines that were developed to the point of being able to self-replicate and be a bit self-aware. And so they rebel against the beings at Sirius that invented them. Now, those beings figure out how to defeat them and kick them out of the Sirius system, and so they head out into space. And that's how they come to Earth. And they think they're going to take over Earth and dominate man. But of course we defeat them. It seems to be Campbell is giving us a warning about allowing our society to become too reliant on these machines, that you still need the human element, which is relevant today because of the whole movement towards AI software and how AI software is already being used to replace human workers. We seem to be recklessly proceeding to develop this technology without really thinking through how it's going to change things and planning for how the world's going to change when these things are in place. We're just going ahead like a bull in a china shop and worrying about consequences later, which is a really dumb thing to do. And that's basically what Campbell is saying here. It's a dumb thing to just develop these technologies and not think about how it's going to affect us, not think about the consequences. And that's exactly what we're not doing right now. We're not thinking about the consequences. We don't care. We're just going to develop these things because we can. And if it tanks our entire world economy, oh well, so sad. Not sure if it'll go that far, but it's going to cause changes to our whole society and changes in the way people have to live. And now that it's out of the bottle, there's no turning back with it. It's going to happen, whether we like it or not, whether it's good for us or not, because we aren't thinking about consequences. And that's what Campbell's trying to say with this story. So he's got an interesting point, an interesting idea, an interesting philosophical point to make about machines and about technology. And it's things like this is why I say we need to remember the past. We need to preserve things like the Metal Horde, because they do have in them things that we can learn from and which could teach us to move forward more intelligently. But as far as an entertaining story, I would give it a pass. That's all for this one. The next story is going to be the first in a series which was ultimately collected. It ultimately resulted in 3 books. The first book collects, I believe, 3 stories together and is called The Black Star Passes after the title of the second story. But the first story is called Piracy Preferred. And come on, I beg you to come on back and hear. I've read the Black Star Passes before, so I know kind of what I'm in for. But I want to reread it and compare it and contrast it with these Waterson and Gale stories and see if there's any improvement, because the Black Star Passes has achieved classic status in science fiction. So let's see if it deserves it from today's perspective. So I hope you'll come on back. And in the meantime, like us and subscribe to our channel. Give us a little money on Patreon so we can do things like get better cameras or better microphones or whatever we need. And keep coming back. I've got a lot of other videos I'll be posting before I post the next Campbell, including I'm going to be reading a Cormac McCarthy novel, All the Pretty Horses, and Emily and I are going to be reviewing a couple of Clifford Simak stories, out of order, we're jumping ahead, and a whole lot of other things, more Heinlein, more James Tiptree Jr., all coming up this summer. And so I hope you'll come back.